Hi there. Welcome again to this video. This is Rucola, and I want to explain you in more detail how the macro command works behind the scenes. So in the last video we saw that the we've met the Kickstarter class. We can pass in a value. It can be the ID of a macro or the name of a command, and then we say Kickstarter run, and all the magic happens automatically. So what happens when a Kickstarter is instantiated and gets a value? Well, if we go to the macro command directory, you see we have a bin directory, and here are some classes. So this is where the action takes place. Those two directories we already discussed in earlier videos. So here you see the Kickstarter. And what the Kickstarter does is the following. It will require a controller and a helper. Here you see them in the core directory. It gets a new instance of the controller, and when the controller gets instantiated, it will, in its constructor, will get also a new context with some d-dot values. And the command context is here. This command context is used to store all kinds of configurations, and this will be passed into the command when it's running, so you can configure it. So we were in the Kickstarter. This will create a controller. What it also does with this helper is read our config file, this one, and it will, let's say if we passed in value 1 for macro 1, it will look up the command sequence and stuff like that and put it into the context. And also the configurations for each command. Now, when the Kickstarter has done this, then it will see if we passed in a string or a number. If it is a string, it knows, okay, we're going to run a single action. And if we pass in a number, it knows we will run a macro. Now first I will have a look at just a single command. What will happen is that the controller, Kickstarter will say if we run it, this controller process. So the controller has a method called process. Here it is. And then it will look into the context and get the action key, and it has a value, and that is set to the value that we passed in when we ran the Kickstarter. So it's the name of the command. Then the controller delegates the resolving of this name to the command factory. Here you have it. And then the command factory will just resolve the path and see if the file exists, and then create an instance of this new command back to the controller. And then the controller will execute this command and pass in the context as its value. Now, when a command runs, this is an abstract class, and each command will extend this abstract class. And each command will have an execute method and take context as a parameter. If we have a look at a real command, you can see here, single command, that it extends macro command. This is the abstract class, and it has an execute method, and it takes context as its as a parameter context. And then you see it returns a promise and a result object. So each command should return promise and a result object, and it will set the name. We can have a look at this command result here. So we set the name of the command that is running. You can pass in the actual value that it will return and a message, so you can comment on your result value or your data. Let's see, go back to command. So it will execute and then return the promise to the controller, and the controller will return the promise to the Kickstarter. And as you can see, the Kickstarter will return the promise to your application here. And then you can do something with the value. So this is basically what happens when a command executes. Now, if you want to run commands in sync, like with a macro, then you can see here the Kickstarter looks if you pass in the name of a command or the number, the ID of a macro, and it will set the context parameter macro ID accordingly. So what will happen behind the scenes is that when the controller, where is it? Here. When the controller runs, it will again delegate the resolving of the command to the command factory, and the command factory will say, okay, this is a macro and you need to require the macro.js and run it. So it will run this file. What this does is it takes the command sequence as specified in your configuration file. It's this array. And then it will just create a promise chain for you and will run each command one by one and go back. Finally, we'll resolve this promise, and you get an result object with all the results in it from the previous commands. And this is passed back to the controller passes it back to the Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter will again pass it back to your application, and then you have access to the results of each command. So basically this is what happens behind the scene. In the next video I want to show you how you can build your own command. So you already saw that it needs to create a new promise and makes use of the command result. So, but I will explain that in more detail in the next video. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful, and goodbye.